Good morning. Good morning and welcome to First Unitarian Universalist Church of Nashville. My name is Jay Tiefenbrunn. My pronouns are she, her, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to online worship. I do serve as your Director of Music Ministries, and our collaborative pianist is Holling Smith-Bourne. If you're watching live, buttons will appear that will guide you to our website and our With You worship portal. If you're watching later on YouTube and Facebook, you can visit firstuunash.org and click on the With You Worship Portal button for all the information that you need, including the order of service, joys and concerns, and our offering. We open the service today with our new version of hymn number 146, Soon the Day Will Arrive. We will sing the verses in English, but I'd like to invite you to try the Hebrew of the chorus. Hey, Denise, would you help me with teaching the congregation the Hebrew?
Glad to.
Fantastic, thank you. So repeat after me. Od.
Od.
Tir.
Tir.
E.
E.
Od tir e.
Od tir e.
Kama tov.
Kama tov.
Yehi ye.
Yehi e.
Good. Yehi ye.
Yehi e.
Good. Bashana.
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 Haba'a.
Haba'a.
Great. I want to invite you to make yourselves ready to sing. You can dance and have a good time to this song. And if you lose the Hebrew, you can sing the words you know, or you can sing lai la 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 la. Please join in singing Soon the Day Will Arrive / Bashana Haba'a.
Good morning. My name is Denise Gouch, and I am your Assistant Minister for Congregational Engagement. If you are visiting us today, and if you're a regular, we would love to see you in the chat. Won't you say hello and introduce yourselves, please? I invite you now to drop into your heart space, to be deeply centered there. And from the space of your heart, reach out to all the others who are worshiping with us in this service. Today, our hearts have several important passages in life to recognize. Alandria Williams, the co-moderator of the Unitarian Universalist Association, known to many of us, at least through her leadership of our General Assembly meetings, but also in many, many other leadership roles. And she E was a native of East Tennessee and a lifelong member of the Tennessee Valley UU congregation in Knoxville. So we know her a little more closely here, some of us. She was loved, Alandria was loved by many and will be missed for her leadership and for her spirit. A beloved elder of First UU passed away yesterday morning. Joan Moore has been a member of our congregation since the very early 1950s. She's been active for many, many decades in many areas of our congregational life and beyond, in other local churches, as part of Women's Spirit, as part of the UU Women's Federation, and as an active participant in many ways at the UUA and General Assembly. She is missed and she will be missed. The candles back here are for Alandria and for Joan. We also have Rosebud. This is for Greta Margaret Sutton Rogers, who was born on Friday morning. Parents Ashley Cole and Rachel Rogers, big sibling Ellis, are all delighted and are all doing well. We are grateful in the midst of our grief to celebrate a new life and to honor the legacy of these two elders who have gone on. And so,
good morning. I'm Gail Spar, and I'm a member of the Worship Committee. The words for our chalice lighting this morning were written by Lisa Doge. Why a chalice? The question comes. It's the cup of life, we answer. A cup of blessings overflowing. A cup of water to quench our spirit's thirst. A cup of wine for celebration and dedication. The flame of truth, the fire of purification. Oil for anointing, healing. Out of chaos, fear, and horror, thus was the symbol crafted a generation ago. So may it be for us in these days of uncertainty, sorrow, and rage, and a light to warm our souls and guide us home.
Good morning. My name is Yadi Biggs, and I'm a Worship Associate at Post U Nashville, as well as being your Social Justice Co-Chair. I know many of us have heavy hearts and heavy minds during this time, with the passing of Alandria and the passing of RBG, as well as the passing of Joan Moore. Today, for our opening words, I want to share with you a very short quote by Ruth Bader Ginsburg that speaks perfectly to the message of our service to this morning and to all that we are witnessing and bearing in these days. If you are neutral on situations of injustice, you have chosen to side with the oppressors. Friends, come, let us worship together this morning.
Permission to use the book, The Big Umbrella, for this service was obtained from the author by email on September 9, 2020. Thank you to Amy June Bates for her good message, beautiful illustrations, and generous heart. The story for today will be The Big Umbrella by Amy June Bates and co-written with Juniper Bates. I also have someone to co-tell the story with me. This is Emerson. Hello. The Big Umbrella.
By the front door, there's an umbrella. It is big. It is a big, friendly umbrella. It likes to help. It likes to spread its arms wide. It loves to give shelter. It loves to gather people in. It doesn't matter if you are tall, or hairy, or plaid. It doesn't matter how many legs you have. Some people worry that there won't be enough room under the big umbrella. But the amazing thing is, there is. There is always room.
There is always room.
Good morning. In case you've just joined us, my name is Denise Couch and I am your assistant minister, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to worship with us. As Unitarian Universalists, our spiritual paths vary, but in this congregation, we have made a covenant together. We affirm our interdependence, celebrate our differences, and work for justice. We are a welcoming congregation, and we deepen our relationships as we serve our congregation's mission to create community, nurture spiritual growth, and act on our values in the broader world, guided by reason and compassion. I'd like to extend a special welcome to visitors worshiping with us. If you are seeking a spiritual home, we hope that you may find it here. All are welcome to attend our services, and people become members of this congregation by signing the membership book and supporting the church with their time and finances. If you are considering joining the church or would just like to know more about us, please be in touch with me. You can find my email address in the staff directory under Contact Us on the website. Following the service, we hope everyone will enjoy at least one of the online opportunities for fellowship listed in our online worship portal, and our website holds many other announcements of interest, which I hope you will read. I have been asked to emphasize these. There are only 6 days left to submit your donation for our fall auction. We're accepting donations of online and pandemic-safe social events, services, gift cards or certificates, food and treats, and other special items. The deadline to donate is Saturday, October 3rd. Find out more at firstuunash.org. Drive by to meet Reverend Diane Daugert during a socially distanced Hello and Welcome Parade on Sunday, October 4th from 1 to 3 p.m. Reverend Diane's transition support team will be on hand to direct traffic through the lower parking lot, where visitors will be able to stop for a brief chat to meet our new minister. And our church is joining more than 60 other member organizations of Nashville Organized for Action and Hope. You may hear us talk about them as NOAA, throughout the city, to strive for 100% registration and voting among all eligible individuals. As part of this voter challenge campaign, an email went out last week to our email list asking each of you to make a commitment to register and vote. If you got the email, you'll see a link to a commitment card for making this pledge to vote. If you don't have the email, you can find the link in the voter challenge article, both in the newsletter and on our website. We would very much like to get 100% participation in this pledge to vote. You may know that we share every Sunday's collection with an organization whose work outside our walls aligns with our values. For the month of September, our Share the Plate partner is our congregation's Room in the Inn Social Justice Action Team. You can learn more about their work in our online worship portal. For now, we don't have the pleasure of passing physical offering bowls, but our finance folks have made sure that anyone, anytime can access our online donation form at firstuunash.org. If you would like to mail a check to the church, please write in the memo line how you would like your donation to be used. If you want your gift to be credited to your pledge, please write pledge. If you write Sunday offering, it will be donated to our Share the Plate partner. In this season of virtual offering bowls, we are especially grateful for the steady generosity which allows us both within and beyond the congregation to continue creating community, nurturing spiritual growth, and acting on our values. We are also deeply grateful for your presence with us, and I invite you now to join our weekly ritual of gathered community. Following the upcoming musical interlude, we will share the joys and concerns submitted through the online form, provided permission is given on that form. All joys and concerns will be shared as usual with our lay ministry team. So I invite you now to settle into the space that you are inhabiting and know that just your presence in that space makes it a holy place. And know too that you are connected across time and space with all the rest of us worshiping together in this service. And as you settle, take a few deep breaths. You will quite likely become aware of certain sorrows, certain concerns, or certain celebrations and joys that you have brought to this moment from the days and weeks before. If you would like to share those with the congregation to have me speak them aloud, you are invited to use our Joys and Concerns online form to send those in now, or you may prefer simply to sit and feel your connection with all of us. Now, let us listen. We have one joy to share. This is from Maria and Adam Cottingham, who write, "We were excited to celebrate Charles' 3rd birthday this past Wednesday." Happy birthday, Charles. And from Bill Taylor, a sorrow. Bill writes, "I will miss Joan so much. She was so dedicated to this church. She was a cornerstone of the church, a deep inspiration to me, and an inspiration and definitely a presence to so many of us." Thank you, Bill. And I'm seeing from Ann Morse in the chat, "Both my mother and brother were in the hospital this week and are both back home and doing well." We're so glad they're doing well. Ann, thank you. Holding these joys and concerns, griefs, and all the others that I know lie as yet unspoken within us. Holding these together with each other, let us join our hearts in a spirit of prayer. Spirit of life and love, we gather this morning with gratitude for this community which gathers faithfully, repeatedly, to be with each other, to support each other, to share all that is our life with each other. We gather in gratitude for brand new life and for life that is growing and changing every day, celebrating birthdays, moving through new experiences all the time. We gather with gratitude for lives that have been fully lived, lives that in their ending leave us in grief over the loss that lies in front of us, but leave us also in wonder and awe at the legacies that are left behind, and with the comfort and peace of knowing that those loved ones have passed over to walk among the ancestors, that their legacies live on here in us as we honor them and continue their work here. May this time together be a time in which we can bring all of these joys, all of these grief, all of our gratitude, and together as a community find the peace with which we can move into the world and continue to do the work that is needed for us to do. Blessed be. Amen. May it be so.
Good morning. I'm Carlene Dowell, and I was one of your delegates for General Assembly this year. 3 years ago, the Commission on Institutional Change was formed as a result of another racially charged moment in which hiring practices at the district and national level of UU were challenged. The Commission made its final report this year. It was called Widening the Circle of Concern, and referred to it as a beginning of truth and reconciliation for UUs. It looked at many areas: theology, governance, restoration, accountability, just to name a few, in its 200-page report. The reading today comes from its final thoughts section. In spite of the promise of our movement, we still need to address the biases and oppression within our systems to build resilience in our living tradition for times we are in and strengthen it for future generations. Making these changes will allow us to stay relevant. Addressing these issues will allow us to live into the theology we profess. Furthermore, if we are committed to this work as central to our faith, we will create the conditions in which all who are attracted to the theological premises of our faith will be able to thrive. As we prepare to close, we offer our further distillation of all that is contained within these pages. We affirm ultimately what we have been talking about for these years are basic commitments that grow out of our theological legacy. Retailored for our times, these are our commitments. Hospitality, the willingness to welcome all who would find solace, comfort, and inspiration in the values that we hold. Common sense, the idea that we can often just do things in a more simple and basic way that makes sense rather than make things not necessarily convoluted. Empathy, the ability to perceive and care about another's sore struggles, even if it's not our own. Recognizing that it's part of ours and that we are bound together through interdependence that is part of our faith. Compassion, the ability to walk with another and to be caring toward that one as if they were ourself. Self-awareness and mindfulness, recognizing the power we have over one another, simply allowing ourselves to wake up to that, not to be ashamed or made to feel guilty, rather simply to allow ourselves to prepare our own hearts for transformation. Continuity, the recognition that we would not be having these conversations in 2020 if we kept them going in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. For commitment and continuance are what will allow real progress. Humility, knowing we don't know the answers, especially in these times, offering to one another glimpses of what we do know, and so together creating a clearer sense of where we are going. Restoration, understanding that where harm has been done, effort must be expended to provide, address, and redress. Prioritization, many of our recommendations are about focus and emphasis rather than money. Though investment is needed in specific areas, much of what can be accomplished can be done by education and attention. So that concludes the Widening the Circle summary. It can be found on the website, and the link to it is also here in the chat. Intersectionality Accountability Commission has been formed to carry out the recommendations of Widening the Circle of Concern. The Beloved Community Committee is looking forward to working with First UU to implement these recommendations in our community. May it be so.
I invite you now to finish arriving to this space. To settle in, you may choose to put your feet firmly on the floor or fold them in wherever you might be sitting underneath you. Our meditation this morning was written by Alondria Williams and speaks to our individual worthiness in a time when many of us may be questioning our worthiness or the worthiness of others. Alondria wrote, "We are worthy not because of what we produce, but because of who we are. We are divine bodies of light and darkness. You are not worthy because of what you offer, not because of what is on your mind, not for the support you give others, and not for what you give at all. We are worthy and we are whole, just in this great turning, in this pandemic, in this radical readjustment and alignment. We are not disposable. We are needed. We are the people that have withstood everything, that have withstood everything that has been thrown at us. As Maya Angelou would say, yet still I rise. We rise from the pain. We rise from the grief. We rise from the limits that people place on us and the limits that we place on ourselves. We rise to the children and the ancestors' meditations. I rise to be my true self. We rise to be our true selves. We are our true selves in relationship to our families and our communities, recognizing our liberating and whole selves, honoring them and others as we strive for abundant communities, abundant lives, abundant relationships, abundant values, and cultural manifestations. We are worthiness personified. I, you, and we are worthy and deserve a life we are not always fighting for existence. Imagine what a world we could create if we were not always in the struggle. Imagine what we could envision if we could just let it go and go there. So tired, always having to resist, to fight, demanding to everyone that has the courage, the power, the ability to co-create what we want, a need while rooting in what we cannot lose for who we are. You are a visionary. You are the hope. You are the ancestors' dreams. No, you might not have ever ended up on someone's list somewhere, but you were on the list of someone's heart and mind. And if it is how you are to move through the world, you are the people and the examples. You are the embodiment of what we need. Thank you all for being the embodiment not of a product, but the embodiment of radical love, care, and sanctuary. It is time. Embodiment time. Embodiment. Living our values out loud. Let me every day live my values out loud. Let us every day live our values out loud. Embodying our values, not the product. Beyond productivity, past productivity, true embodiment, life. Friends, may it be so, and amen.
I'd like to invite you to join Holling and me and Melanie, Brian, and Tony in singing Draw the Circle Wide by Mark A. Miller and Gordon Light.
Draw the circle, draw
If you've been through our new member class, or you've been a UU for many years, or maybe just perused one of our hymnals, you know that we covenant and affirm to support 7 principles, such as the inherent worth and dignity of every person, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and respect for the interdependent web of life. In 2013, an 8th principle was drafted in an attempt to speak to the primarily European American dominance of most UU congregations' membership, culture, and leadership. Over the next few years, it was refined, and in 2017, the home church of one of the principles writers adopted it and incorporated it into their covenant. The authors recommended that the UUA adopt it as the 8th principle. Now, I should say here that the UUA is only empowered to act through the vote of delegates at the annual General Assembly, that event at which congregations meet to conduct the association's business. Change tends to come slowly in an environment where a majority of congregations must agree to a change. Congregations tend to have their own priorities. Funding to create the necessary structure to bring about real change is often fleeting, and priorities shift. And so there has been no real action at the national level to add this principle. Well, what is this 8th principle? It reads, "We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions." Those of us who attended this year's virtual GA heard and saw compelling reasons why this principle is needed now. When we are talking about our principles, we often skip over a very important phrase that begins each one. We covenant to affirm and promote. Start with that word covenant. That means we promise one another, and we hold one another accountable for actions that do what we say we will do. Even if, as an association of more than 1,000 congregations, we haven't found the collective will, energy, or whatever it takes to adopt this principle, we believe First UU Nashville has shown the desire to create beloved community. We aren't there yet, but we are working on it. We have a ways to go. That's why we're bringing this principle to you. You will hear more about it in the coming months. Beloved community, social justice, and other interested people will be working with the board in the hope that it will be presented for adoption at the mid-year congregational meeting in January. We urge you, this congregation, to learn about it, adopt it, and incorporate it into our principles and covenant.
Please join me in thinking through how to widen the circle at First UU Nashville.
I'm so glad to be here with you today at the front end of this church year together, our new year, if you will. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jennifer Hackett, a member of this church, as well as a candidate for Ministerial Fellowship with the Unitarian Universalist Association, or the UUA. My pronouns are she and her. Now, I'm not sure who all is with us today, and as an extension of welcome to any newcomers or visitors, I hope the regulars will lend me some patience as I say all of our insider abbreviations the long way around the first time. So we are, thank goodness, a liberal religious faith movement. We're very clear about that. There's no pussyfooting around when it comes to us declaring boldly and clearly our values as outlined in the 7 principles that guide us. And in our Aggie sort of way, within the 7 principles, we don't even dangle our propositions, of which I approve. If you're not familiar with our 7 principles yet, they have a long and storied history and sometimes a herstory. Our nationwide magazine, UU World, has a great article from the early 2000s about the backstory of our principles. It's kind of a long story, so I'll sum up. Many UUs love Robert's Rules of Order, and we have a great deal of polity wonks among us. These are people who enjoy a good 3 to 18-year debate over the placement of commas. I'm mostly kidding, but not entirely. And we enjoy doing things by consensus, which does take longer than being told how to do something. And so when Unitarians and Universalists who used to be separate entities started to get serious about merging in the early 1960s, they were able to agree on a precursor to our current principles. So they look kind of like they do today, but not as good or as relevant to the current times. And then UU women came along in the 70s and asked for the circle to get a little wider, to allow the principles to shift and have more gender-inclusive language. And just about any time people outside of the circle ask, can you widen the circle a little? I can just squeeze in if you'll just step back and make a little more room. We can get a little squirrely. And we look to our lengthy process to look at that circle from all of the angles until we feel more comfortable. The thing is, for a liberal religion, we have a long history of tightening up when people ask us to make a little more room. Maybe sometimes we're afraid that the circle will start to take on angles that don't look like the circles we know anymore. Maybe we sometimes fear it will break if we step back and open it too wide. Unfortunately, that leaves the people asking to come in feeling sort of unwelcome. Out there alone outside the circle, while we have our debates and feel more comfortable eventually. If we have a little faith in our faith, that our circles are, true to their nature, infinite in their capacity to still be a circle regardless of size, then we can watch them stretch and watch them get infinitely bigger. More like what our values state explicitly. I posit to you that this stretching makes us infinitely better. Many of you know that this church belongs to the UUA, which is not our governing body, but our guide, a group to whom we and several 100,000 of our closest UU church friends belong. Sort of like belonging to the Moose Lodge, but without the funny hats and handshakes. In 2017, the non-hiring of a qualified person of color to a leadership role in the UUA set off a good series of events. The leader at the time resigned, a leadership team that better represented all of those in the circle emerged, and a task force was formed. We love a good task force. This task force has been hard at work behind the scenes, analyzing, watching, listening, observing, collecting stories from so many UU circles for almost 3 years. And earlier this year, they published their findings. You can find their report at the UUA website. We will provide you with the link at the chat at the end of the service. Guess what they called it? Widening the Circle of Concern. I strongly encourage you to read it later. Perhaps take it in chunks or take it in community with the offerings of the beloved community committee will be sponsoring. It is the foundational work for Unitarian Universalism in the immediate future. Let me sum up for you. As a people, we generally really value ongoing education, which is good because we have some work to do with living out our collective values as best we can. And they provide us with some solutions. So as you can imagine, at this year's annual meeting of the UUA called General Assembly, or GA, we heard a lot about how we can widen the circle with our own faith, within our own faith, as well as the world around us. I attended GA this year as a delegate, or a person who was nominated by the congregation to not just attend, but also to vote on behalf of the congregation. This is how we do things. This is what democracy looks like. You may have forgotten for having seen it so little enacted across our country lately. what democracy does look like. I attended a Widening the Circle of Concerns session at GA this June about reparations. Reparation is often a scary word for a white person, but I soldiered on. In the session, I learned that in best case scenarios, the dominant culture with the lion's share of privilege is not the decider of fixing the problems. The offended group of people is and should be the decider of how the problems feel fixed. When an equal share of power has been deliberately or unintentionally withheld from any group of people, that group of people deserves empowerment to tell the dominant group what they need to make it right. When our children are small and they injure one another by accident or on purpose, we tell them to say, "I'm sorry. How can I help?" The injured party gets to decide how help should arrive. This is also a foundational principle in restorative justice. Reparation comes through phrases in my house such as, "Don't do that again," or "I need a hug," or, as happens somewhat frequently, "Can I have $1?" We learned this reparation technique from Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, which is the next generation iteration from Mr. Rogers' puppet, Daniel Tiger, who's still teaching his good values after all these years. In any event, when I'd been to GA 2 years prior, I'd heard about the proposal that was and wasn't working its way through our UUA channels of democracy. It's called the 8th Principle, a new one to add on to the existing 7 principles that guide our actions. Let me read it to you. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. Good, right? And when I first heard of it 2 years ago, I thought it sounded great. And I heard the reasons why it wasn't being fast-tracked for adoption by everyone in the UUA immediately. They went like this. Well, it seems like the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 7th principles all have elements of this one in it. And also, our UUA bylaws are reviewed routinely, and they're soon going to start a multi-year process of reviewing Article 2 of the bylaws, which encompasses the principles, so it doesn't really seem like the best time to go changing the existing principles when they're just going to be reviewed anyway. And finally, the most cringeworthy one. We don't like the words, and we think we should spend more time rewriting them. You should know that the words were carefully chosen by a group of people of color. It's one reparation or repairing of relationship to respect the words as they've been written. They chose the words that they most needed to help them feel welcome in our circles. It's a white supremacy culture thing to desire control over that too. And 2 years ago, when I first heard of this 8th principle, I and apparently thousands of others thought, okay, I hope that passes. And that was that. I forgot about it, which I can do because it doesn't affect me directly because of my privilege. Except that it does affect me because it affects the people that I want to feel welcome here. I want to invite us to think more deeply about why it might not be okay to forget about it or to wait while these things are being debated and reviewed and voted on as a nationwide body of UUs, which could take another 3 to 18 years. In 1648, our forebears in faith in New England got together and hammered out what is referred to today as the Cambridge Platform of 1648. It has a hilariously long real title. Get ready. The Cambridge Platform of Church Discipline gathered out of the Word of God and agreed upon by the elders and messengers of the churches assembled in synod in 1648. but we just refer to it as the Cambridge platform, probably because of its run-on sentence. The platform outlines that we are Congregationalists. In other words, we make our own decisions as individual churches. The structure is the opposite of top-down power. Our power lies with us, right here. This group of people assembled, and the leadership we elect to this church. We have guidance from the UUA, but we, the leadership and fellow congregants of the First UU Church of Nashville, can and do adopt principles when we feel it's appropriate and for the good of the whole. Unfortunately, the work underlying the 8th principle, the work of dismantling white supremacy culture in our country and in our churches, is going to be significant, and we'll need each other for reminders and accountability to the work. This week alone in Louisville at 9 p.m. local time on Wednesday night, anguished protesters found themselves pitted against the police and a city curfew and had nowhere safe to go. Our UU ministers in Louisville responded to a clergy all call to head downtown. Seeing the situation, they opened the UU church downtown for the first time since March and let all of the people in, giving shape and definition and action to the word sanctuary. As I sat on my front patio last Saturday, ironically participating in a nationwide UU Allies for Racial Justice caucus online, a pickup truck drove by and saw the only sign in front of my house, my Black Lives Matter sign, and shouted, "Trump hater!" My own personal struggle regarding emotions over our current elected leader aside, my first feeling was fear for my family. What if they came back? What if they got aggressive? I immediately contemplated taking down the sign. Fortunately, I was with people via Zoom at that moment who helped me to stay accountable. How am I supposed to be a good ally if I crumple at the first feeling of fear? My Black, Indigenous, and people of color siblings of faith don't get to escape unwanted and unwarranted persecution by taking down a sign. At General Assembly this summer, my delegation from church established an email text chain to communicate while we were all on our computers for this first ever all virtual GA. So there we all were, chugging along with our learning and our voting and our texting, when we got a group text from one in our delegation. He identifies as a person of color and a UU, and he gave me permission to share this text with you. From Roddy Biggs. So I just want to say that a chat group I'm in, POC, including myself, are pretty outraged at the fact that UUA and UU places of worship are wanting or saying that they need to study racism and villages more before being able to vote on the affirmation of the 8th principle. It has been asked now over and over how many more Black, POC, and queer lives must be taken before our faith and our congregations take action. Many feel that if we wait, it will be too late. Roddy's words hit me like a ton of bricks. Too late or they'll leave us? Too late or they'll be dead? Either way, not good. Someone I know, a person whom I personally care what happens to them, shook me out of my complacency. I didn't really know that he needed my help, and again, it was my privilege sneaking out again, not to know. But now I do know, and I can't unknow it, and I don't want to unknow it. What a rare gift that was for me, a mostly European American descendant, to gain access to exactly what people who feel outside of the circle need and want. It's exhausting for our BIPOC siblings to have to expend emotional energy to ask us for what they need over and over again. It's so easy to offer a place in the circle. Read these words of the 8th principle and agree to them as a starting place, And this will keep our siblings of color from wanting to leave our circle. This will help them to feel safe. This will help them to feel heard. Can it be this easy? Yes and no. It's only easy if we back up the adopted words with educating ourselves constantly about how to be in right relationship, how to keep the circle ever widening, how to address the needs. But it is easy as a congregational church to adopt the principle. And it is significantly appreciated gesture from people of color who wrote it and who will be most affected by its adoption. The work is living into it. Please know that you are invited to continue the conversation about widening the circle and living into the principles of our faith, of this church. The circle of Unitarian Universalism won't break. There's room enough for everyone. Let's adopt and then live into the 8th principle now, when our country and our church need it more than ever. May it be so.
Our closing song invites us into this challenge more than I realized. And the attribution for when the Spirit says do in our hymnal singing the journey sticks in my craw. Like so many songs from protest movements and eras, this song, finding an attribution for when the Spirit says do, is very difficult. And we sing today our arrangement by Mark Freund from Singing the Journey, and with the music by the group Unfolding. Please enjoy the music, understand where it comes from, and understand what work we still need to do in our hearts when the Spirit says
you got to do when the Spirit says do. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you've got to do, oh Lord. You got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 You got to sing when that Spirit says sing. Sing when the Spirit you got to sing when that Spirit says sing. Sing, sing, sing. When the Spirit says sing, you got to sing, oh Lord. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 Spirit says
The words to our chalice extinguishing were written by Elizabeth Sell Jones, and they're at the bottom of your order of service. Please join me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Our closing words this morning, again, come from Alondria Williams, a dear mentor to many young adults in our communities, including myself. E wrote, "What is lifting my spirit is holding that I am unbound. What is lifting up my spirit is that I will break the chains which bound me. What is lifting my spirit is that I am deserving of 100% radical love, and I will not accept anything less. Friends, our service is over. May our service begin again, renewed.